Good evening to all the participants. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar to this webinar by Mr. R. Parthasarathy on on.
Prithvi, you are not audible to me. I couldn't hear you. I don't know whether others heard you, but I couldn't hear you or anything.
Sir, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, now. Yeah.
Sorry, sir. There seemed to be some.
No problem. No.
So good evening to all the participants. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar to this series by R. Parthasarathy sir on journey from HSN to GST part 2. So the rules will be the same. First, the entire presentation will be taken by Parthasarathy sir, and at the end of the presentation, we will have the question answer round where you can, if you have any queries, you can put it in the chat box or you can raise your hands in the app. We will take up the queries one by one, depending on the availability of time. So thank you once again. Over to you, Parthasarathy sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to this part 2 and the concluding part on classification of commodities journey from HSN to GST. Very quick recap I would give of what we did. You have to enable me to do the screen sharing. It is
Yes, sir.
disabled. Yeah, please grant me. Yeah.
Done, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, very quick recap of the last week. We just traced the history of the classification under the harmonized system nomenclature from the World Customs Organization, and how for the last more than 35 years, many countries have adopted uniformly the HSN system, and India has also adopted the same system, not only for customs, and India also adopted it for excise also at a later point of time with completely aligned to the HSN, and how the classification principles under the HSN are directly applicable in India as well, both under the excise and the customs tariff. Of course, certainly it was not applicable in the VAT and the sales tax regimes, except to later amendments where they very specifically mentioned the HSN head and the classification will be determined according to the HSN. A few entries alone came. But in the GST, I said it's entirely based on the HSN, and therefore whatever we have collected as a knowledge under the customs and the excise will be totally applicable. And we started off by saying that the entire tariff has been divided into 21 sections, 97 chapters, with one chapter 77 being kept free, and two chapters 98, 99 are specific to India, and how there are about 1,222 headings at the 4-digit level and about 5,000 and odd subheadings at the 6-digit level, and all items have to be classified within one of these 5,300 and odd items under the sun. Every commodity will come under that. And how in the Indian system we have 8-digit classification, which is a subset of the 6-digit classification for the purpose of a collection of data related to import and exports. But the principle is what is HSN, and all tariffs are aligned at the 6-digit level with the HSN and the Indian tariff. The HSN explanatory notes need not necessarily be fully present. So the HSN explanatory notes, the HSN classification committee's advisory opinions issued from time to time, again, are very useful tools for the purpose of classification. And we entered into the general rules for the interpretation of the customs tariff, where we talked about rule 1 being the primary rule under which classification has to be done, according to which classification will be done in terms of the heading or the specific subheading, and in terms of the relevant section notes and the chapter notes. Those are the critical things legally. And we also said that only if the heading or the section notes or the chapter notes do not otherwise require, we have to go to other rules of classification, rule 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in rule 1, we looked at a number of examples of how rule 1 is applied, including to the most complicated item on how to classify parts of certain goods. We gave 1 or 2 examples. Then we came to rule 2a, which talks about classification of incomplete or unfinished articles. How are they to be classified? We saw that. And in rule 2b, and we have looked at a number of examples of a cycle, and we also looked at the Sony case and a few other cases as to how rule 2a is applied. Then we came to rule 2b, just to give an idea that a reference in a heading to a particular material or substance includes reference to substances made of materials more than that material, some other substances, and the classification of those items will be determined in terms of rule 3. That's where we stopped last time. It took a significant amount of time because we went into a number of examples to clarify the application of the various rules. Now we start off with rule 3, 4, 5, and 6 quickly, and thereafter I have identified some 6 or 7 issues under the GST or classification under the GST, and thereafter I will keep the entire thing open for questions. So that's going to be the structure for today, and we are at the level of rule 3a. As we said, rule 1, 2a, 2b we had covered, and 3a. And 3a says, if goods are prima facie classifiable under 2 or more headings, then the heading which provides the most specific description would be preferred over headings of general description. This again a rule which all of us as lawyers are also aware, always as specific overrides general. Therefore, the same rule is incorporated as rule 3a in the classification also. So if you got prima facie 2 headings under which it can be classified, you have to find out if one of them is specific, then that would be preferred to a general description. So this is again a very straightforward principle. We'll see how it is applied. For example, this case, Forbes Gokak versus the Collective Central Excise, this is a Supreme Court decision. There was a mold. The mold was made of glass, but the purpose of the mold was manufacturing of ophthalmic lenses. Now the question came, if you are talking about molds for ophthalmic lenses, 8480. If it is molds made of glass, it will be under chapter 70. Therefore, the question came, where should it be classified? So as a class, you can see it classified as articles of glass and not as molds for glass articles, because the Supreme Court said the product identifies more clearly with the description article of glass. It is a mold, it is made of glass, therefore it is an article made of glass. The purpose of the mold is to mold the ophthalmic lenses, which also may come under chapter 70 in those days if you're talking about glass lenses. Now we have most of its plastic lenses, etc. But molds for that type of was falling under the machinery chapter, chapter 84 and 85. 8480 was where the classification was there. Therefore, the question came whether we should keep it as mold as a machinery under chapter 84, or should we take it to chapter 70. The Supreme Court said it is a mold made of glass, therefore it is an article of glass, is more specific, and therefore it will be classified according. So this is an example of the application of rule 3a. Now you look at this what we call as the electric shaver. Now if you see 8510, because I put 8510, you can easily identify shavers, hair clippers, and hair removing appliances with self-contained electric motor. Now there is a heading called 8509, electromechanical domestic appliance with self-contained electric motor. The electric shaver will answer to this description. It is an electromechanical appliance, it's a domestic appliance, it has a self-contained motor. But because 8510 identifies specifically shavers, this 8510 would be preferred to 8509 by application of rule 3a. In fact, we may not have to even come to rule 3a. I would say you can go to rule 1, and in terms of the specific heading 8510 shavers, and you say I stop with rule 1, I will do it 8510. Only if somebody says why not 8509, then you can resolve that issue by going to rule 3a and coming back to rule 1 and saying it will be classified under 8510. So this is another example of application of rule 3a. Now this is another example. You have unframed safety glass. It is made of toughened or laminated glass, but it is shaped in such a way that is specifically made for use in an aircraft. So you see the pilot is sitting, the two pilots are sitting, you have a toughened glass or laminated glass there. The shape, size, the curvature, all of them clearly make it for use in aeroplanes. Therefore, whether you will still say it is an article of glass, or will you say it is a part of an aircraft? So when you come to that, you will find it may be made suitable by dimension, by curvature, and various other standards to be fitted into an aircraft, but it is primarily a safety glass made of toughened or laminated glass. Therefore, 7007, which talks about safety glass, the same safety glass you are using as for the windshields in the motor cars also. That may be shaped slightly differently, may have a slightly different standard. A diesel engine in a train also has a toughened glass at the front. So it may be used in different applications, with different standards, etc., different shapes, different curvatures, but the fact is they are all safety glass made of toughened or laminated. Therefore, 7707 is a specific heading, and under 3A, that would be preferred to the general heading of parts or goods of heading 8801 or 8802, which is parts of aircraft. Now, this again a question which came up before Supreme Court. There is a tariff heading 5702. It talks about carpets. Now, under that heading, carpets made of jute are also specifically covered, and there is a entry for other carpets. So you have carpets made of cotton, a coir, or you have cotton made of jute, and there is a residual other carpets. Now, we had a carpet which is made of three kinds of materials. It was cotton, it was jute, and polypropylene. Polypropylene, as you know, is a synthetic material, whereas cotton and jute are natural material. Coir is also a natural material. So what is the classification that came up in the Champadani Industries before the Supreme Court? And what it found is jute predominated by weight over all other textiles. Therefore, the Supreme Court said, applying Rule 3A, jute predominated over all the textile materials, and there is a specific entry for jute carpets. Therefore, jute carpet would be a heading which would be preferred under Rule 3A over any other material or any other entry called the general entry. So this was also decided by the Supreme Court with reference to a specific carpet, which is Champadani is again very famous in Bengal for making out of jute carpets, etc. So this is another example of 3A. Then we come to quickly Rule 3B. Rule 3B talks about mixtures. Composite goods consisting of different materials are made up of different components, and goods put up for retail sale, which cannot be classified by reference to A. Therefore, you don't have a specific entry. Therefore, you are not able to do 3A, but it has got mixture, it has got composite goods, it has also got different materials, etc. Then it will be classified as if it consisted of the material or component which gives them the essential character, insofar as this criterion is applicable. This is again important, which means for application of 3B, there must be a consensus that there is an essential character. Then you decide the classification according to the material or component which gives the essential character. Now, if that criterion is not applicable, then Rule 3B itself will not apply. Then we will go to Rule 3C or whatever other rules are available, how to classify, we look at it. So 3B is talking about mixtures and composite goods which cannot be classified by a specific entry, general entry under 3A, will be classified according to the material or component which gives them essential character if this criterion is applicable. Now let's quickly Now you look at 3B. I gave an example. You have a mini lunch which has got plain rice, you have vegetables, you have sambar, rasam, curd, papad, etc. So many different varieties. So you have a variety of items. Each one may be separately classified, but as a thali with the rice, we say rice gives the essential character. Therefore, I will go by 1904 as the classification for a mini thali lunch. Similarly, we had this issue on multimedia speakers. You see the three speakers on the right, but apart from the speaker, it is also an FM radio, and it has got USB port. So you put into the USB port anything, and you will be able to play music through the speaker. Therefore, what is the classification? So you have three different functions. It is a mixture or a composite goods. It has got speaker, it has got FM radio, it has got USB port. Now, according to me, again, you can probably have a debate on that. The speaker is imparting the essential character, and speakers are covered under 8518. Therefore, it will be classified under 8518. Why? Because nobody buys, and in an example, this particular multimedia speaker, for its FM radio function or USB port function, they are auxiliary. Essentially, you want a speaker which reproduces excellent quality sound so that you can play your multimedia files. Therefore, speaker is what even a consumer who wants to buy is looking at the quality of the speaker, and the other things are only auxiliaries or like accessories. You are able to enjoy better because FM radio is also there. Whenever you don't have anything, you can use the FM radio and the sound will come out of the speaker. Therefore, by application of Rule 3B, this multimedia speaker will also be classified based on the essential character of the speaker, which is 8518. Some examples I wanted to give of 3B. Now, this is a decision of the tribunal in Sandplast, India, applying 3B. This is a brick. The brick is made of sand, lime, and fly ash. Now, because of sand and lime, Chapter 68 specifically gives articles of stone, plastic, cement, asbestos, mica, similar material. Sand and lime are coming in the category of stone. Because sand and lime are there and fly ash is there, Chapter 68 is applicable because sand and lime are predominantly there. It's applicable to the impugned goods. Fly ash, in this case, was added later to the sand lime composition bricks. And therefore, the court said 3B is applicable, that you are adding fly ash in a small quantity does not alter. It continues to be a brick made up of sand and lime. If you don't make the fly ash, which is optional, you will still have a brick made of sand and lime, which will fall under Chapter 68 of the tariff. Therefore, you don't get into the fact that fly ash was added, etc., and Rule 3B, you are still able to decide based on sand and lime. From the composition of bricks, as above, fly ash being used in least quantity, essential material for impugned bricks remain is sand and lime. Thus, the impugned bricks, in our opinion, qualify for being classified in a tariff at 6810, precisely 6810, 9099, and they also ruled which one is not, because they can also be manufactured without fly ash, as it is used earlier, but not without sand and lime. So, sand and lime are the two essential, and because both of them fall under 68, they said be classified under 6810. So this is an application, but here they say the why Rule 3B is the most applicable. Removing fly ash, looking into stone, sand and lime, they impart the essential character. Both of them fall under Chapter 68 as articles of stone. Therefore, that will be the most applicable thing. Then the third one in Rule 3C. This is like any other tiebreaker rule. Whenever we have best judgment like that, when goods cannot be classified by reference to Rule 3A, specific versus general, or 3B, that component which gives essential character, they are to be classified in the heading which occurs last in the numerical order among those which equally merit consideration in determining the classification. So you take each one of those items, you find out what is the classification, which one occurs at the last. That will be, this is a tiebreaker rule. In service tax, we used to have whichever occurs first in the numerical order. So you can have any tiebreaker. So in HSN and in the customs tariff, the tiebreaker rule is the one which occurs last in the numerical order. That will be the classification. Here, just look at the right hand side. It is a health mix. Manna's health mix, let's say it has got wheat, it has got barley, it has got maize, it has got rice, it has got millet, it has got ragi. So many different components, each of a small quantity, and then you make it in the powder and make it in the health mix. And each one falls under Chapter 10. Because you cannot know specific entry for the mixture, there is no essential character which is being imparted. Each one of them imparts certain specific benefits. Therefore, it goes under 3C. Ragi occurs numerically last 1008. In this particular case, when I given those 6 items, therefore the classification of this mixture will be under the customs tariff 1008. This is an application of 3C. Now, some examples more you can see. There is a gift set. which has got a socks, a pair of socks and ties. Now socks falls under 6115 and ties fall under 6117. You cannot say tie gives essential character or socks give essential character or specific. Therefore, you apply the tiebreaker and say ties 6117 occurs last in the numerical order. So that will be the classification for this gift set. An interesting question arose in the vessel for pleasure or sport, which is 8903, and a cruise ship is 8907 in the waterways shipyard, etc. It was like a floating casino, but people also travel in that. You travel from here to Singapore, Malaysia, etc., and there is also a casino place. Therefore, they said it is both a vessel for pleasure or sport, and it is also a cruise ship which carries people from one port to another, etc. Therefore, both these are equally applicable, and the tribunal said, therefore, the one which occurs last in the numerical order and the classification will be under 8903. So what you find is there are examples of application of all these interpretative rules in the customs and the excise, and a plethora of decisions and a wealth of decisions and precedents are available in the last 30 years, which can be usefully transported and used in the GST as well. That is the whole purpose of the makeover from the excise customs into the GST, and from VAT and as a sales tax also into the GST. You have now a very good method. You have got a plethora of decisions which will also help you in arriving at the decisions. Now, this is one case on CSTAT Calcutta did it in 2018. This was a bonded fabric with 58. That was the description. It has got a bottom layer of knitted fabric and top layer made of woven fabrics. The two have been bonded together to form the imported goods. So where it will fall is what the question was. Because it is composite goods and knitted fabric comes under chapter 60, woven fabrics come under chapter 54, and therefore they say, and I cannot say either knitted fabric or woven fabric gives the essential character. Therefore, rule 3C will be applied, and the one which occurs numerical in the last is the knitted chapter 60. Therefore, the classification will be under 6006 3200. So that's how the tribunal decided this particular case. Now, the last rule, general rule for interpretation will be goods which cannot be classified in accordance with above rules shall be classified under the heading appropriate to the good they are most akin, which is why I said even though there are only 5,387 odd subheadings under the HSN and also under the customs tariff, there may be tens of thousands of goods, but all of them have to be fitted into the tariff. Apart from 3C, which is a tiebreaker rule where you know there are two headings applicable. But if you find that you may not be able to fit it in any head, the rule 4 says classify it under the heading appropriate to the goods to which it is akin. Most resembling, you classify it according to that. This is rule 4. Generally, I don't think we have come across any application of rule 4. Most of the cases they will be able to decide under the other classification. But I just give you an example. There is a fungus, and there are spores of the fungus. Now, the spores of the fungus are the one which are used for propagation of the fungus in the importing country. While you have a heading for fungus, you don't have a heading at all for spores. Therefore, how it could be classified in rule 4, we have given an example. Bacterial cultures which are inoculated on a nutritional medium for further propagation are specifically covered under chapter 3002, called human blood, animal blood prepared for therapeutic, prophylactic or diagnostic uses, anti-sera, other blood fractions and immunological products, whether or not modified, etc. Cultures of microorganisms and similar products. Now here, the spores are more akin to cultures of microorganisms. So you grow the culture in a nutritional medium in a laboratory. Therefore, by application of that, you say the spores of a fungus will be more akin to cultures of microorganisms. So notwithstanding there is no head, you may classify it under 30. This is one example for application of rule 4. Otherwise, hardly I have come across the application of rule 4 in any case in the customs and the excise issues. Now I come to rule 5. Rules 1 to 4 are words for specific. Rule 5 is talking about what we call as camera cases, musical instruments, how to classify those. This is with reference to packaging method. Rule 5 is on packaging items. So we'll quickly look at Rule 5A. The simple rule is camera cases, musical instrument cases, gun cases, drawing instrument, all these which have a specific shape in order to fit a specified article, and it is for long-term use along with the article, and they are presented with the articles that are intended, they will be classified according to the goods. So I have a violin, I have the violin along with the violin case. The violin case is made of excellent teak wood. I won't go to articles of wood for the violin case because it has been presented along with the case and the violin. Wherever the violin is classified, the case of violin will also get classified there. Therefore, it is very important. These are cases which are specifically shaped or fitted. They are suitable for long-term use and are presented with the articles for which they are intended. Suppose they are not presented with the articles for which they are intended. Suppose I am importing a camera case made of leather and another camera case made of plastic. I am not importing the camera. Then this rule 5 will not apply. You will try to look for where you will classify the camera case of leather or camera case of the plastic. I'll come to that separately, and then you will classify it there. That's the first rule. Therefore, whenever the cases and the goods are presented together, they will be classified according to the main goods along which they are to be used. That's the principle. The rule does not, however, apply to containers which give the whole its essential character. Now, I have given this. There is a silver tray. In the silver tray are 3 bowls. One of them has got almonds, one has got cashew, one has got Kishmish dried grapes. And all of them are put together, and there is a Diwali gift you are making. Now, you cannot say the silver tray, etc. is specifically shaped, and then you are putting all these things. You go by the article. They say this one, the rule does not apply because the container applied to which gives the whole its essential character. The entire essential character is given by the silver tray or dish, and not the 3 bowls containing the almonds, cashew, etc. They are just a tray. Therefore, this will be classified under the heading of the container, which will be the silver tray. This is in Rule 5, which is specific to the, as I said, packing material. Now, in Rule 5B, now subject to the provisions of 5A, that is fine. Packing materials and packing containers which are presented along with the goods shall be classified as the goods if they are of a kind used normally for packing goods. So, you are importing a multimedia speaker. It has come packed in a, let us say, a carton made of paperboard. Inside you have thermocol, etc. It comes. In that case, it will always, because it's a kind normally used for packing those goods, there won't be a separate classification for those packing material or packing containers. The entire thing will be like a speaker, and whatever is the duty rate applicable to that will apply. However, this provision will not apply when packing materials or packing containers are clearly suitable for repetitive use. You have oxygen gas coming in a cylinder. You have various types of welding gases which are coming in steel containers. You have our cooking gas which comes in a cylinder. These are packing materials or containers which are clearly meant for repetitive use. You will not be using Rule 5 in order to classify those goods. That will be a cylinder which will be articles of steel or whatever the material it's made of. You will classify them separately because they are meant for repeated use. So Rule 5 is talking about packing material or container. Those packing materials like the violin cases or the gun cases, etc., which are specifically shaped for a long-term use along with the item with which it is to be used, when presented together, they will be classified according to the goods. When they are presented separately, according to the normal classification which would be applicable to those items, that's what will be the position. And if there are packing material, if it does not give the essential character, then you will go according to the material, the silver tray example I was giving. Then normal packing material which goes along with any goods, they will be classified according to the goods. But something which is meant for repeated use, they will be classified separately and not as a packing for oxygen. No, it will be oxygen gas and the cylinder will be separate. That's how the classification works. This is according to rule 5. Now that I think is all that we have to see, and all these rules and all these rulings are what will be applicable under the GST as well. Now the first and most important thing for us to note in the GST is there is an explanation 3 to the rate notification, which says tariff item, subheading, heading and chapter shall mean respectively a tariff item, subheading, heading and chapter as specified in the first schedule to the Customs Tariff Act 1975. That is how the link to the GST is now coming from the customs. So the GST borrows specifically all the meanings of these items from the Customs Tariff Act. The Customs Tariff Act borrows all these from the HSN. Therefore, the HSN explanatory notes, the customs tariff headings, etc., all the rulings under the customs and excise, which was also completely aligned with the HSN, all of them now get transported as far as GST is concerned. So this is the link which ensures that HSN is applicable for classification of commodities under the GST also. Now, once we establish that link, that is how I said is journey from HSN to customs to the GST. Now we look at some examples in GST. And we started off last week, I just started off saying with the whole wheat Malabar Paratha case, 5% or 18%, and said that I will deal with it in the next one. But very, very important is, of course, a lot of things are written about the Paratha, the Malabar Paratha, whether it is by 5 or 18%. But what is important is, what was the submission before the Advanced Ruling Authority? And in the light of the advances, the arguments, whether it is correct or not, that's what we have to test. And thereafter, we'll examine, is there some other argument which was possible? That's how we'll have to look at it. Otherwise, we may get clouded with a decision. Now, all that was argued by the applicant before the Advanced Ruling Authority was, there is an entry 99A in Schedule 1, which gives the tariff heading as 1905 or 2106 heading, and the description is kakda, plain chapati or roti. Therefore, the question posed was whether the whole wheat paratha or the Malabar paratha will be eligible for 5% under this entry 99A. That was the question which was posed. The Advanced Ruling Authority examined 1905 and 2106 and came to the conclusion this paratha will fall under 2106. We'll again test the correctness later. But as correctly said, whether it is 1905 or 2106, both of them are covered under 99A. So to that extent, you are there. Then the question is whether a Malabar paratha or a whole wheat paratha can be kakda, plain chapati or roti. There we have to only go by the popular meaning trade parlance test, because it's very specific. We all know it is not kakda, but can you call a whole wheat or a Malabar paratha as a plain chapati or roti? The answer to me is no. If I go to any restaurant and say, please give me plain chapati, there's only one meaning. No one will give me Malabar paratha. If I ask for roti, there is a possibility they may ask me if they have, do you want tandoori roti or do you want tawa roti? These two things are possible. There's tawa roti or a tandoori roti. Even in that case, no one will ask whether I should give you paratha. If I want a paratha or a Malabar paratha, I should very specifically say I need a paratha. Therefore, if you go by the very plain meaning of plain chapati or roti, it's correct that Malabar paratha or paratha will not fall under that particular entry. Therefore, the Advanced Ruling Authority said, while the paratha will be classified under 2106, it will not be eligible for 5% because it does not fall under either kakada or plain chapati or roti. That was the decision. Now the other entry is of course 1905, bread, pastries, cakes and biscuits. Under that 1905-90 there are others. 2106 is food preparations not elsewhere specific. Therefore it is a residual entry, and you will always come to a residual entry if and only if you can rule out any other specific entry, then only you can come to 2106. Now one error committed in deciding 2106 was that you will have to, it is either ready or not ready, it is frozen, so many different varieties I talked about. HSN explanatory note specifically covers, it covers preparations for use. It can be either direct or after processing, which means you have to cook. So you have plain chapatis available, you bring it over, you put it in a tawa, heat it, apply a little oil, take it. So you have to do some cooking. You can dissolve or you boil it, milk, water, etc. for using consumption. They will be covered provided they are not covered by any other heading of the nomenclature. And they went to 2106 as per rule 3C of the GIR, which means between 9105 and 2106, the one which occurs is in numerical order later. That is what the rule which has been applied. But now, so to that extent, without going into 1905, 2106, either way, you will be under 199A, but it may not fall under kakra, plain chapati, or roti, which is the wordings used in the notification. And you all know, when you have an exemption notification, it has to be strictly construed for the purpose of entry. After you enter the notification, you are eligible, then a wide meaning should be given to that. All Supreme Court decisions, etc., all of us are aware. But the question to be asked is, can plain chapati or roti cover Malabar paratha? Now, you come, what is paratha? If the argument has been made, if you say paratha is a flat, thick piece of unleavened bread, fried in a griddle. So you have a definition of that. And even as early as 1953, we have this Hyderabad definition. Bread includes all forms of bread which are prepared by moistening, kneading, baking, frying, or roasting meal or flour, which is what we do, either whole wheat or maida, whichever it. You are preparing it by moistening and you also knead it, etc. You may add yeast, you may not eat it, etc. In order to puff or whatever you want to do. That yeast and other things or baking soda is all used only to leaven or puff the bread. That's what you are doing. So bread covers everything. And there is another entry which specifically says bread, branded or otherwise, except when served for consumption. So if you're going to a restaurant and asking for a bun butter jam and they apply it in the bread and then give it to you, because it is served for consumption, that will not be covered. Other than that, bread and pizza bread falling under tariff 1905 are exempt under serial number 97 of schedule 1. So what has to be argued is this Malabar paratha is actually unleavened bread, and there is a definition of bread according to which this will definitely fall under the category, and all bread, whether it is branded or otherwise, will fall under 1905. Therefore 2106 is not correct. There's a specific entry available. You cannot go to rule 3C, and there is an exemption for it under 97, not 5%. There is an exemption available for it under 97. So this probably could have been the argument, and probably this could now be taken if somebody takes up a new argument. This was not considered by the advanced ruling authority in the earlier case, and you can probably float for that it is a form of bread, and all breads are falling under 1905, and they will be exempt under serial number 97 of schedule 1. So it all depends on how much research you do and how you present. In this particular case, what was done was only 99A. So to the extent of 99A, the decision of the advanced ruling authority, again, in my opinion, it's correct. Now I take another example. This is called a Chromochemy Laboratory Private Limited. There was a product called Prepared Laboratory Reagents. This is a pharmaceutical reference standard reagent. It is imported. On import, it is classified in 3822/0090, which has been upheld by the Tribunal of Supreme Court. 3822 refers to miscellaneous, chapter 38 miscellaneous chemical products. So it comes under that. But the question was whether GST is 12% on imports because you have to pay additional duty equal to the GST. Serial number 80 talked about schedule 2, all diagnostic kits and reagents. If you look at this advanced ruling, it is again not with reference to classification per se under 3822, but whether it will be covered as all diagnostic kits and reagents, serial number 80 for 12%, otherwise 18. Now, the advanced ruling authority said all diagnostic kits and all diagnostic reagents. Yours is not a diagnostic reagent, it is only a laboratory reagent which is a reference standard. Therefore, you are not eligible for 12%. That is what the ruling was. And God knows how they applied Aegis generis. You don't have specific words, 3 or 4 words followed by a general word. Then we say the meaning of general word will take color from the earlier specific words. The meaning will be restricted. Here you have only all diagnostic kits and reagents. There are no 2 or 3 specific words followed by a general word for the general word to have the meaning of that. But they still applied the Aegis generis. But all that they really said is reagents also must be diagnostic reagents, not non-diagnostic reagents. Fortunately, the appellate authority for advanced ruling overturned it by saying no, it is applicable to all diagnostic kits and all reagents. It is not a diagnostic reagents, it applies to all reagents, whether laboratory or diagnostic, and therefore it is eligible for 12%. This again comes with reference to a specific exemption where the wordings are different with the vis-a-vis what would have been available with reference to classification. So really not a dispute on classification, but it is a dispute with reference to applicability of a particular serial number of a notification. But even in those cases, there will be examples where we may be able to apply the rules for interpretation and point out why that entry should be interpreted in a particular manner and why a particular classification should be prepared. So that's the more important thing. Now, classification of flavored milk. This you can see there are conflicting rulings. In the case of Britannia Industries and Tirumala Milk Products, it has been held that it will fall under 2202/9930, which is beverages. And they relied on the GST Council's refusal to clarify that flavored milk could be classified under 040. The people went to the GST Council and said flavored milk should be classified into 0402. GST Council refused, and that was also taken as in support of classification at 2202. Because again, 0402 means you are talking about 5%, 2202 you are talking about 18 to 18%, so you have a big rate difference. Classification of flavored milk as a dairy product under the FSSA has no bearing on classification under HSN. That is one of the points which was talked about. But in Karnataka Cooperative Milk Producers Federation, it was held that it will be classified as a milk under 0402. The reason given was, for a product to be classified under chapter 2202, it should be based on water. Here it is based on milk. Therefore, 2202 is ruled out. And they also took account of a Gujarat High Court decision, which was not a GST case, which held that flavored milk is a form of milk. I don't think there is any doubt flavored milk is a form of milk. But the question is whether it will come under 0402 as milk and milk product, or whether it will come as beverages under 2202. That was not the issue at all before the Gujarat High Court. So you find two contrary views, and therefore the issue is whether it will fall under 2202 or 0402. Now, 2202 beverage at 12%, sorry, I said 18, I think, wrong. That is the correct one, not 0. Why is, kindly see HSN explanatory notes. Now, people had gone about what the GST Council said or what this said, what the Gujarat High Court said, which was not with reference to a specific issue like this. But HSN says, what is milk? 5% data, 0402 say, this heading covers milk and cream and concentrated, and cream, comma, concentrated, for example, evaporated. So you can also have the milk concentrated by evaporation, make it thick, etc. So it can be milk and cream concentrated, or it can contain added sugar or other sweetening matter. So it can have sugar or any other type of sweetening matter. And that sugar or sweetening matter may be liquid, paste, or solid, and whether or not preserved or reconstituted. The milk may be reconstituted from a milk powder. Again, it may reconstitute into, and it may be preserved, not preserved. So what is the scope of milk is given in the HSN as only that which contains added sugar or other sweetening material. Flavoring is not specifically talked about. So if you go to the HSN explanatory notes, this is again not found in the customs tariff, etc. You have to go to the HSN explanatory notes. You will get an answer that flavored milk will not be treated as a milk, but it will be treated as a beverage. For that, I'll also, just for a moment, give me, I have before me the chapter. Just 1 second. I will see chapter 22 it was also used by them to say chapter 22 covers only water based. That again is a very, very fundamental mistake which was committed. 2202 reads like this. I have not put it in slide, therefore I'm just reading it out. Waters, including mineral water and aerated water, containing added sugar or other sweetening matter or flavored. So waters including mineral waters and aerated waters. So 3 types: water, mineral water, aerated water, containing added sugar or other sweetening method or flavored. So flavored water 2202. But after that there is a comma and it says and other non-alcoholic beverages. So it is not that everything under 2202 has to be water based. That was a mistake committed by the Advanced Ruling Authority. Say 2202 means it must be made out of water only. Here it is made of milk, therefore 0402 will be applicable. But here what you will find is after everything covered under water, which up to flavored water, it talks about other non-alcoholic beverages and adds further not including fruit or vegetable juices of heading 2009. If it is based on water, you will not have fruit and vegetable juices. They go of course in 2009, but there is a specific entry 2202-9910 which talks about soya milk drinks, whether or not sweetened or flavored, beverages containing milk 2202-9930. So in the customs tariff, you have a very specific entry with reference to beverages containing milk. Therefore, the conclusion by the authority that 2202 is really made up of products should be based on water. This you see here. That I think is absolutely an incorrect position. The entire heading has not been read properly, with the result that 2202 has been ruled out. So this again gives an indication of how useful will be the knowledge of the HSN and the customs tariff in deciding the correct classification. Sorry. Wait, it's not there. I'm just saying it's getting frozen. Yeah, okay. Now I come to the next one, automobile chains. Now you will find this again I have dealt with in the first session itself. 7315 specifically covers chains of iron and steel, 18%. If it is part of it is for a motorcycle, but if it is part of a motorcycle, it is 28%. But because we saw note 2B to section 17, which says parts of general use are excluded from section 17. Section 17 covers automobiles. Therefore, an automobile chain, if it is part of general use, notwithstanding it is for a motorcycle, it will still not fall under the section 2017, which means it will not be treated as part of motorcycles. And parts of general use, you will remember, I pointed out, it says parts of general use means goods which are falling under various items in section chapter 73, which is articles of iron and steel. And similar, if it is copper, aluminum, I said, 7315 is specifically to chains. Therefore, chains of iron and steel will, because all these are applicable to GST, by application of note 2B to section 17, it will not be classified as a part of motorcycle because maximum dispute will be on this. Motorcycle parts are 28%. And therefore, everything something to do with motorcycle or a motor vehicle will always sought to be classified under chapter 87. But we'll have to examine section note B for classification of parts, whether you are talking about section 16, note 2, section 17, note. In all of them, you have to look for the classification of parts before deciding what is the correct status of the classification. And as I pointed out last time, there is a contrary decision in GS Auto case with the Supreme Court. But when you read the Supreme Court decision, what you will find is there are a number of appeals. Except for one appeal, most of the other appeals are not under the aligned system under the HSN. They were much prior to that. They were talking about tariff entry 52, 68 under central excise, which was not aligned with the HSN at all. There was only one appeal which was under, and there, after having noted that the parts of general use will not fall, they still went into the second note which says parts which are used for suitable for use principally or essentially with the goods of the section will always be classified along with the goods of that section. They applied that. But you can go to that only after you have crossed parts of general use and parts which are in themselves goods specified in headings. Unless and until you overcome these two, you cannot go at all to the next section note on classification. That was probably a mistake. Therefore, I think easily this will be able to be overcome because there are any other decisions where we'll be able to point out that if you have 2A, 2B, 2C, the Supreme Court said 2B can be invoked if and only if after you have said 2A is not applicable. So you must rule out the specific classification. Parts of general use must be ruled out. 2A must be ruled out. After that, if you have still some part, you will still have to ask the question, are they principal wholly or principally usable with these goods? Then you classify along with the goods. If it cannot, there is a residual heading for classification of those parts and you go to those particular parts. So there was some mistake in the only one particular appeal in the case of GS Auto, which creates some problem on classification of parts of general use. There is again chain and sprocket combo. Now a chain, as you saw, it's a part of general use, but you have a sprocket, you have a combination. So you cannot say that under rule 3A, there is no specific was a general heading for a combination of a sprocket which is under 8714 and a chain which is under 7315. You don't have any specific head. Therefore 3B, where they say, is there something which gives an essential character? Just like what we see in either in service tax or with reference to GST, when you are talking about composite goods, which is the principal supply and which is the incidental supply, and what are the various principles which I should use in order to determine a principal supply, that same type of logic applies. Here you find the sprocket contributes a significant value in the combination of chain and sprocket. Therefore, you'll find that the sprocket therefore gives the essential character, and it will be by 28% because it is sold in sets and the essential character test will apply. So you have such types of combinations are also coming here. Now you also have very interesting questions on pre-queued tire treads. There is heading 4012. Which talks about tire treads. Let us forget tire flaps, which is 18%, no problem. 4012 tire treads is 28. There's a 4008 which talks about tread rubber for resoling or repairing rubber tires. A tire tread can also be used for retreading. A tread rubber for resoling is also there under 4008. Will you say 4008 is specific because it talks about tread rubber for resoling? So that other tire tread can be for any purpose, but this is specifically for resoling or repairing of rubber tires. Therefore, do you apply 3A? Then it is 4008, 80%. If you say it is not general specific, no essential character, you apply the rule 3C, then 4012 occurs last in the numerical order. If you apply, it becomes 28%. I am pointing out the issue, but as I said, if you read 4008, you will get a very good idea of how this entire thing is dealt with in the tariff. So it is possible to argue it is only 18% or not 28%, because I just read out. I'm just opening the tariff, that's why it's taking a little time. (4008) 2940. It says tread rubber and tread packing strip for resoling or repairing or retreading rubber tires. Therefore, we say we are talking about tread rubber, we are talking about tread packing strip for resoling or repairing or retreading of rubber tires. So if you are talking about this as a very specific with reference to resoling or repairing or retreading, so you get it, a tread rubber and the tread packing strip as a kit in order to use it in any roadside shop for the purpose of resoling or repairing or retrading the rubber tires, it is possible to argue 40082940 is very specific with reference to resoling or repairing or retrading of rubber tires, and therefore 4008 will be applicable. So I just read out 4008 to show a specificity, because rule 1 also very specifically says the classification has to be determined according to the specific headings and the subheadings and the relevant section notes and chapter notes. That's all. Therefore, if you are able to get a tread rubber for retrading of tires specifically covered under 4008, it's possible to say rule 3A will apply in this particular case, whereas the tire tread and tire, which they talk about 4012, are general. They are not very specific to resoling. Resoling is specifically covered, therefore it will come under 4008. It's possible. Now, last few more slides, I'll close. Ayurvedic shampoo. Again, from time immemorial, we have been having the fight, because medicament is a lower rate. If it is a cosmetic, it is a higher rate. So if it is medicament 12, if it is talking about preparation for use on the hair, 18%. So use on the hair, use on the head, whether to cure a particular type of disease, medicament, etc. I think you have very good decision, Supreme Court in Sirens and also the Puma Ayurvedic also, where they said if all these ingredients follow the composition follows the Ayurvedic test and in the common parlance test. And 3, is it cure or is it care? Cure but not care test. If it is curing a particular disease or a particular type of thing, then you call it as a medicament. But if it is not, then it is only for caring the thing. Then you say it is for preparation for use on the hair. So if you say it is a medicament which prevents further fall of hair, you may say it is for the treatment of the hair not to fall by strengthening the hair roots to the head. Therefore, it is still a cure and not a care test. So it all depends on what are the ingredients which go, whether all the ingredients follow the Ayurvedic test, and in common parlance how it is understood. Of course, they don't bother whether you have to go to a medical shop or whether the medical prescription. These are not dispositive. But what is important is the Ayurvedic text content and whether it is curing any particular disease or any particular type of situation, and not a simple care for the hair. So this is again an issue which will keep, even though we now have only 5 schedules and we have 5 different rates, but there are exemption notifications. So classification is not going to be a redundant issue as far as GST is concerned. We are going to have a lot more of issues under classification of GST also. There is a small issue on the brake systems, etc., but I don't think I'm going to cover any of them now, because you can keep doing things. I just want to close this at this point of time at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. I'll take questions, but I'll conclude by saying only one thing. Classification is a very, very interesting field. Yes, to some extent, an understanding of the product, and to some extent, therefore, technology, especially when you are going to classify goods under chapter 84, 85, 90, for example, or also 85 and 90 have got very good advanced types of goods for which you'll have to understand the technology when you are talking about telecommunication type of equipment, what is regeneration of data or signals, etc. So you need to understand a lot more. But more important, it has also got a lot more of legal interpretations in order to get the goods classified. So the whole purpose, I would say, of these 2 sessions is to give you a flavor for what the great things are involved in classification. Under the GST, we will be seeing them even up the High Court. Therefore, this will be a very, very important topic for all of us involved in commodity classification or commodity taxation. This will be a very important thing. And I will conclude by saying in around 2000, I had the opportunity of conducting a workshop exclusively for Hewlett-Packard people from all over the world in Delhi for 3 days. It was on customs, classification, and valuation. 3 full days only for them on custom classification, valuation. Valuation was 2 full days, classification was only 1 day. 2 days valuation is mainly on Rule 10(1)(c). Those who know about royalties and license fee, how it should be added to the value. It's a very, very interesting subject. That alone can take 2 or 3 sessions also. You have so much there on like what Raghavan did on work contract. You have so much on royalties and license fees which you can talk about. But we leave that. On the classification, it took 1 day. And here we have got today 1 hour, and last, of course, I took almost like 75 minutes. But that why I want to point that 1 day was only on chapters 84, 85, and 90. It is not on any other chapter. HP had an interest only in chapter 84, 85, and 90. And in 84, 85, 90, there was so much to discuss for 1 whole day of 5 hours. And I was dealing with people who had for 24 years doing classification for HP of the various products. Of course, technology keeps changing, new and new product come, how they are doing it. Just to give that the classification is indeed a very, very interesting subject. Even after application of the various section notes and chapter notes, there will still be ambiguity. And of course, that's where we come. So I thank the Madras Tax Bar for giving me this opportunity of 2 sessions on classification. I hope all of you found it useful. It's now open for questions. Only one request, unlike last time, please do not ask very specific classification opinions from me, because one, I don't have all the books in front of me. Second is understanding facts and the exact nature of the product is important before I can even answer any question. Therefore, it must be with reference to the various principles, etc., which are classified good, but not very specific commodities, etc., because I don't want to answer things in a seminar like this where without understanding a full product, we give a classification. I don't want somebody to come later and say, no, you said the classification was like that. So it is always, we have to keep very specific items from this seminar. That's not the purpose of it, but application of the various principles, etc. Yes, definitely we can discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful second part on classification today. Sir, there has been there's one question in the chat box. Before we move on to question from Krishnanand sir, we will take up that question and then ask Krishnanand sir for his question. So the question is, what should be the HSN for unstuffed and stuffed parathas? Request you to throw light on the same. There are different views of all on this issue after recent advanced ruling in the case of ID food.
Okay. Yeah, you remember, I think in the first session, I gave one example, Paneer Darbari, if I remember right. Whether Paneer will give or Darbari, because there is a lot of vegetables which go in, and the classification was decided beginning, vegetables had more than 58% or something, therefore it will be classified as vegetables under 20.0 to preparation of vegetables and not Paneer, which is a milk-based product which gives essential character. I remember giving that example. So when you look at the paratha, stuffed and unstuffed, of course, is like any bread, what we are talking about 1905-90. But even if it is stuffed, according to me, it is still a paratha that you are stuffing it, but I don't think anybody is going to say stuffed paratha means stuffing far outweighs the weight. It's like you have a pizza. You have the pizza base, which is the pizza bread. On top of that, various toppings, etc. come. But it is you may have all the toppings, but I'm very doubtful whether stuffed parathas as a result will go out on the ground that the vegetables, etc. may outweigh the weight of the paratha base, and therefore following the Paneer Darbari case, will go to 2002. According to me, the stuffed and unstuffed parathas should both be under 1905-90, not 2106. That's where my idea would be. But I have some of my colleagues who are present here. I want to ask whether P. Sridharan, you want to say something different? You are welcome. Then only it becomes very interesting case. Sridharan, you want to say something?
I'll unmute him, sir. I'll unmute him.
P. Sridharan, please unmute him.
Yes, sir. Sridharan, sir, I'm giving you the permission to unmute. Kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah. Sir, I'm here.
Yes.
Sir, I agree with your views that it is either the vegetable or the paratha which predominates by weight. As you said that in the paratha, or stuffed paratha, like in the case of pizza topping, the stuffing will definitely not predominate by weight. Therefore, it should be regarded more as a paratha, notwithstanding the fact that it is stuffed. Therefore, I agree with your view, sir. It should be
Yeah,
paratha.
generally if you take aloo paratha or you take a paneer paratha or you take onion, water, is stuffing is there, but the stuffing is definitely giving a different taste, but the paratha gives the essential character according to me. So that's where it should fall.
Absolutely, sir. I
Yeah.
agree.
Sir, I would request you to just hold on because Mr. Hitesh, who asked that question, I think wants to ask something more on this. I'll just
Yeah.
unmute him.
Hello,
Mr.
good
Hitesh?
evening, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So just one doubt that chapter 19, if we see in tariff, it says preparation of cereals, flour, starch, or milk.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cover vegetables.
Mhm.
Vegetables may it be aloo or paneer, etc. So
Correct.
can we apply rule 3 in this? Rule
Yeah,
3 of
that I'm talking about what is the entire thing is a preparation based on flour, wheat, etc. It comes at 1905. So you have, that is why first is what we take. Any reference in a heading to a particular substance will also include a reference to that substance along with other substances is what we saw 2b. And then we get into 3 where you have mixtures. And in mixtures, we are talking about if there is a specific heading, if there is no specific heading, that which gives the essential character. And here paratha will give the essential character in the 3b. Notwithstanding the stuffing is there, but the stuffing is ancillary. You have a plain paratha, you have a stuffed paratha, and stuffing can be aloo, or you are talking about gobi, or you are talking about very other different type of stuffing. So definitely it could still fall under. That's why it is an article. But what we have to therefore say is, by application of rule 1, we cannot find classification for a stuffed paratha. Rule 2a is not applicable. Rule 2b says a reference to any substance in a heading shall include a reference to that substance along with other substances. And that classification you have to go to 3. 3a says the specific was a general heading. We don't have that. Then you are coming to 3b, essential character insofar as that is applicable. And the essential character is given only by the paratha and not by the stuffing. The stuffing is incidental to that paratha. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I'll unmute Dr. Krishnanand. Sir, Krishnanand, sir?
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Solunga.
Sir, before I ask my question,
Ah,
there are 5 schedules of tariff.
correct.
Last line of the tariff, if you have it in front of you, can you please read it?
Uh-huh. I don't have the tariff before. You mean GST tariff schedule?
Yes, yes, yes.
No, I don't have it before me.
What
If you have it, you can read it.
What I would actually like to submit is, they have categorically stated the classification will be
Right.
based on HSN.
Hmm.
Now, when the GST first came into existence, you had 4-digit headings, 6-digit headings, and 8-digit headings.
Correct.
Now, I basically deal with customs matters.
Correct.
When goods were imported, the customs authorities wanted to classify for the purposes of basic customs duty under the HSN.
Correct.
Whereas the parts were listed in the GST schedule as 4-digit. So therefore, they say this will go under Schedule 3 under not elsewhere specified and charged at a higher rate of duty. Now, the chapter notes to the chapter are very clear that goods are parts of a particular material. They will be classified at the setting and it will not go to any other heading. Now, it was very clear, but the lower level authorities continued to even pass speaking orders. At that particular point of time when GST was introduced, and in fact APS knows it very well, if you read me off in 1 minute, that's a different story. But because it was a speaking order, the High Court refused to interfere and said, you go and appear before the appellate authority and raise all these points.
Yeah.
The appellate authority concluded that ultimately parts imported separately for a specific use, specific purpose, shall be classified as machinery for which it is supposed to be used.
Hmm.
This is a dispute that is yet to be solved because the customs authorities want to classify a particular product separately for the purposes of basic customs duty and separately for the purposes of IGST.
Yeah.
How do you come to a conclusion as to where it has to be classified when you know specifically that it is only for a particular purpose?
Yeah, no, what you are saying is absolutely valid. I'll just throw, I didn't show this particular slide. You will see this slide. No, if I do it on the thing, because I have hidden it, you didn't get it. You will see this. Parts of equipment classification or IGST, yes, it is a problem. What you are, Mr. Krishnanand, Krishnan saying is a very important point. While if you take the entire customs tariff for the HSN, because everything is given to the last detail, classification of parts, etc. is fine. But when you get into GST, you have 5 schedules. In many of them, if it starts with the 4 digit or the 6 digit, etc., and if parts sometimes come under the 6th digit and further down at the 8th digit also may be classified. The customs officials are saying for classifying for basic customs duty, I will follow the HSN and your customs tariff. But for the payment of IGST, I will not look into that. I will go what is contained in the schedule. That is because a particular item called 80, let us say 85, 29, 90 may be a part. But the main heading 85, 29 may refer to something else. So they seem to be of the view, unless and until the parts are very specifically covered under the IGST, I will not give you the classification for those parts by the application of the HSN interpretation. Sir, is that a problem which you, because I have identified one problem like that, but I wanted to be sure whether I understood you correctly or something different. But what you are saying is absolutely correct. Customs authorities, for the purposes of IGST, are not applying the rules of interpretation and also the HSN in the same way as they apply for basic custom duty. There is a problem. But according to me, it should exist there, then and only then you and I are also relevant, no?
I agree. But that is why before I ask my question, I want to read the last line after the 5th schedule. Clearly clarifies that for all practical purposes or interpretation of these schedules, I'll refer to the chapter tariff notes as well as the HSN. That is the final. Now it is despite this that these people are taking this kind of a view.
Sir, this is exactly what this explanation is. This is what you're saying, no?
Yes.
Tariff, all of them will have the meaning to ascend. That's why I started off how the connection come to the GST. That's why, yes, you're absolutely right. But then, with so much of extent, don't you see, with all clarity, we still have so much of dispute. After 70 years, you still have orders being passed without being heard, and we have 20,000 writ petitions, all of them getting remanded back, still happening, no? So, yeah, I don't think I have an answer to that. Only thing is, probably it keeps many of us in business.
Absolutely.
I jokingly say, if the departmental officers become 50% fair, more than 60 to 70% of advocates in the tax side would be without work.
Correct, correct. Absolutely right. I agree with you. I completely agree. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Is there any other questions?
Because of the Paratha example, Pramod sir had named you Paratha instead of Partha.
That was a typo, but then it just ironically.
No problem. I just joke. See, it must have something light also. No, don't.
Yes,
I have not taken offense, so you don't have to worry about that. I just pointing out. No problem. Okay, then I think there are no other questions from whatever I also see. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
I'll just unmute APS, sir.
Prithvi?
Yes, sir.
Prithvi, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are.
Yeah.
I put a line in the chat box when you're talking about the classification of speakers with USB port and other things, FM radio. There is a case of the Bangalore Tribunal, the case of Logic Trading, which was affirmed by the Supreme Court. In fact, it created furor throughout the country when it actually came into issue, not regarding GST, even with regarding classification of the customs tariff itself.
Correct.
It has to be classified. There was the Chief Commissioner's Conference. I don't know whether you're actually aware of a circular that was issued by the board. It was after the Chief Commissioner's Conference, a circular was issued by the board. And after talking all bunkum over a period over about a page and a half, ultimately they said if it has FM radio, it may be classifiable under the setting. If it has a USB port, it may be classified under the setting. And ultimately, the last line read, ultimately it's left to the assessing authority to decide where it will be classified. So, in some of the appeals which I filed before the tribunal, I clearly said all the wise men of the department came down, but ultimately could not arrive at a classification. How do you expect an importer to decide what the classification will be?
No, not only not decide. On top of that, you will accuse them also of suppression and misstatement, willfully to evade taxes. That also will say.
That is exactly what happened. But the Bangalore Tribunal passed an order very categorically stating the main function is that of a speaker, irrespective of all the additional features that it has. And it was taken up to the Supreme Court by the department, and Supreme Court dismissed it by saying that the order of the Bangalore Tribunal was absolutely right. Again, it's a question of the essential characteristics and the main characteristics of the products that is under import.
Sir, one problem which I have to point out is these are all not static. All these goods keep improving. Even in the speakers, what was done in Logic India, now the speaker, what are the various types of additional features we are getting is mind-boggling. So every time something new addition comes, the people think this is not the primary function, something else is the primary function. So the entire thing starts repeating. I don't know whether you remember, originally we used to have this problem on printers for computers. And then printers also became capable of scanning, and they are also became capable of copying. So you got the multifunction machines.
Correct.
When multifunction machine, which is the principal function, if it is printer, it goes along with the computer, then it gets zero duty. Then we had a problem I did for HP large format printers. You are printing sheets, which I am talking about 4 feet by 3 feet, etc. But they are also getting all the inputs only from the computer and printing. So that also we won before the tribunal saying large format printers, which have all the other capabilities, but still can be connected with. Because of all that, you remember, HSN amended the classification. That's why it is important every 5 years amend. They introduced multifunction machines under 8443 printing machines as a separate item, if you remember. Therefore, because of the technological developments also, what in one particular case, speaker with probably an FM, they decide, and later on you get USB, then you have various auxiliary ports, along with that you may be able to do something, then they want again rethink the entire classification. Of course, that's the process which keeps going. Absolutely, you are right, very correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. Is there any other question? If not, we will move on to APS, sir, and after that we will conclude the session. Yes, sir. I don't think there are any further questions. I'll just unmute APS, sir, and after that we can close the session, sir. APS, sir.
Classification is an interesting issue, and you have taken well, sir. The skill of the advocate is required in classifying attending the classification dispute, like what the trial court advocates are known for the cross examination. The skill is explicited in this classification dispute. So far as in High Court, we did not have this classification dispute. Correct. And our maximum endeavor is to say that the appeal will not be maintainable before this court. This is what we have been saying up to this stage. Now, after the introduction of GST, now these kinds of disputes will more come to the High Court, and we will have a lot of work generated on these issues. Right now, we have a classic case where one way the classification rules are accepted for determining the basic customs duty, and the very same authority is not accepting for the classification under the IGST. Of course, when Krishnanand filed the case, it was dismissed on the ground that you avail the alternate remedy for the time being. So when it comes in CMA, really we both sides will have a strong dispute over this issue. Yes, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and for giving me 2 sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Partha, sir, and thank you, APS, sir, for your closing remarks.
Thank you
I
all.
thank participants for joining us today. We will be uploading this session also on our YouTube channel, Madras Tax Bar Chennai. You can, if you have missed this session, you can always view it there. So I once again thank Partha sir for your wonderful 2 sessions on classification. We will definitely want to have you taking through more different topics under GST and various other laws, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you all the participants for joining us. Stay home and stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night, all of you. Good night.
Good night.